Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's your boy Daytime Cheese here, and so we're gonna do a little something different. We're gonna have a recap of the previous week now, and we're going to have a review for the next week as separate videos. We're not gonna have them as the singular videos that they were previously for weeks 1, 2, and 3. They're gonna be separate, and so yeah, let's get into the week 3 recap. So, week 3 was what I called mini rivalry week. We had the Apple Cup, Notre Dame versus Purdue, the Civil War, and many other games. Utah State was a decent game. It wasn't that good of a watch. However, the big top 25 matchup that did take place this week, Boston College versus Mizzou. Mizzou came out on top by a final score of 27-21. That Boston College seemed to be in control most of the game. Just let it up at the end. If we look at some of the stats right here, and Tomas Castellano threw 16 for 28 for 249 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions with a QBR of 77.3. On the rush, Boston College did not really rush well, and they had multiple receivers over 50 yards, with Reed Harris and Lewis Bond being those two. Now, Mizzou had Brandon Cook throwing 21 for 30 on 264 passing yards for a touchdown, no interceptions. The run game was a lot stronger with Nate Knoll rushing for 22 attempts, 121 yards, and his longest being 24-yard carry. Brady Cook also had a rushing touchdown after 6 carries for 6 yards. Morris Cook Marcus Carroll, my bad. 12 for 57, or 12 carries for 57 yards. No touchdowns as well. They, Luther Brennan III had 6 receptions for 117 yards and a touchdown. So this was a decent game. Not really that high of a scoring game for either team, which was probably the biggest game of the week. Notre Dame actually absolutely walked across Purdue. Riley Leonard seemed to be back. Now, the first upset we had was in the Apple Cup, which wasn't really an upset. It was a toss-up game. John Mater, 17 for 34, 246 passing yards, a touchdown and an interception. Rushing, he also led the team with 16 carries for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wayshawn Porter had 10 carries for 49 yards. I think what really struggled here was the Washington O. Will Rogers, 23 for 31 for 314 yards and a touchdown. On the rushing attack, Jonah Coleman, 14 carries for 75 yards. No one scored a rushing touchdown for Washington. And both teams had a 100-yard receiver. Dallas Jackson on Washington, 8 receptions, 162 yards and a touchdown. While for Washington State, Josh Meredith, 7 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown. Final score, Wazoo 24, Washington 19. We also had the upset, Memphis beating Florida State, which I kind of expected. Florida State is not looking good at all this year. LSU comes back to beat South Carolina. This game was close to the end. Garrett Newsomer, 24 for 48, 285 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and interception. On the rushing attack, Caden Durham, 11 carries, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns, with Josh Williams rushing for 10 carries on 20 yards for a touchdown as well. Receiving, no 100-yard receivers on the LSU side. However, on the South Carolina side, there was also none. So, not really a passing game, pass heavy game here. Raheem Sanders, 10 carries for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lenore Sellers, 10 carries on 88 yards for 2 touchdowns as well. And Lenore Sellers here was 9 for 16, 113 yards and an interception. South Carolina did not rely on the passing game much this game. Wisconsin, Alabama, very easy Alabama win. You could see it just from Jalen Milrose, 12 for 17, 196 yards and 3 touchdowns. You knew just from that stat line Alabama was going to win. Now, onto the Civil War, the Ducks finally improved on what, and they looked like the team that they were going to be at the beginning of the season. Dylan Gabriel, 20 for 24. I believe until at halftime he was perfect in the game. Dante Moore was perfect. He came in at the end. Dylan Gabriel, 20 for 24 on 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. On the ground, Jordan James rushed 12 times for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel also had a 54-yard rush for a touchdown, and Noah Whittington also had a rushing touchdown. On the receiving end, Tez Johnson, 7 receptions for 110 yards. Jalen Lamar and Trayshawn Holden each had a touchdown on the receiving side. Um, Tez Johnson did have a fumble, but it was not recovered by Oregon State. Um, Oregon also had a couple of fumbles that were recovered by them. Um, on the defensive side, Uyunglele seemed to have a good game, and if I'm looking at the ESPN stats, Boetcher had 11 total tackles and 5 solo tackles, and I believe he also forced a fumble on Oregon State's first drive. Now, I'm not really going to talk much about the Miami game because this was a blowout, shutout, whatever you want to call it. Kiden Samosa, 16 for 26, 111 yards, and an interception, did not throw a touchdown, obviously. Um, Brendan Sloan, the Miami stopped the run game really well in this game, as well as the passing game. Their defense stepped up. Cam Ward broke Miami history already. 19 for 28, 348 6 yards, and 5 touchdowns. No interceptions for Cam Ward. He is looking like a Heisman player right now. Emory Williams also stepped into the game towards the end. Good to see him back on the field after last year's injury. 11 for 12, 161 yards, and a bomb touchdown. On the rushing attack, A.J. Allen made the most out of what the time he had, with 7 carries and 104 yards and a touchdown, with a 56-yard rush being his longest. Jordan Lyle also 11 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Jacoby George 6 receptions for 109 yards, and Miami really spread the ball throughout this game. There are multiple receivers with over 50 yards. There's actually 6 with 50 yards, and that's just off 1 or 2 receptions. Miami really spread the ball well here. And Mauanoa led the team in tackles, as well as Byzantine with 6 each. Mauanoa with 4 solo tackles and Byzantine with 3 sacks. Simeon Barrow Jr. had 1.5, as well as Tyler Barron having a half sack as well. And yeah, that was about what this week was. It was an exciting week for me as a Ducks and a Hurricanes fan, but a real boring week otherwise. No real upsets. The outcomes were as expected. And yeah, it seems like college football's going, quote unquote, back to normal. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.